So I'm going to show you how to fill a cookie using a piping bag that has no tip. These are the ones that I'm going to send you, and you literally just snip off the edge, the very tip, for the whole size you need. This is really good for when you have a lot of cookies to do, and you can just fill a bag, tie it off, and keep moving. These are way cheaper than regular icing bags, and you can buy them on Amazon, and then Truly Mad Plastics has their own brand that you can buy. Okay, so what I do is I go ahead and cut it a decent size, and then first I do a little bit of an outline, and I'll show you in the other video how I made my icing, the thickness of it. Like the book I showed you, you'll want to do a flooding consistency, and it reminds me of honey. Like, that's the kind of consistency I would suggest. And then usually I go around it one more time just on the inside level, and you'll notice it starts touching and coming together. Like, think of honey. So if you were to put honey on a plate, it's gonna, even though you squirt it out and it's separate, it will start marrying into each other. All right, and so then I put just a little bit in the middle, and you don't want to put too much because it will overflow your cookie, but you're gonna help it find the edges. And then you may notice some bubbles here and there, little air bubbles. That's what these little, they call them boo-boo sticks. They're super cheap, and that's what you use to pop your bubbles and kind of spread it out amongst the cookie. You'll notice I'm going in circular motions. That's really great for when you have a jagged line at the bottom and you need to straighten it out. So for example, over here, you'll notice it's a little thick. I'll just start making circular motions and bringing the icing to the other side. And then up here, I'm gonna just bring this little bit down. It's a little thick up here. This is called a cookie swivel. A girl in Decatur makes them. She's one of the cookiers that I showed you on Instagram to follow. LC Sweets. She's phenomenal, and she makes these really cool swivels for your cookies, so you can turn it without actually having to touch it. Sometimes if I'm doing a lot of work and going fast, you may put like one finger on just to kind of have a barrier so you don't slide your cookie off your workspace. I'm just going to try to straighten that line up at the bottom a little. The key is to not overwork the icing, but at the same time make sure that it's evenly distributed enough that it stays where it's supposed to. For the most part, he looks good. So just watch for the bubbles. I usually keep a lamp right here on my workstation so it really shines good light on it so I can see those bubbles. On white icing, they come up gray, so if you dry with the bubble, it looks like a gray spot. And when you're doing a lot of white, especially faces, Christmas time, things like that have a lot of white Santa Claus beards and things, you don't want the bubbles because nobody likes gray in their beard. All right, so I just pick them up, move them over. Let me do one more for you. This one's a little bit more advanced because you have a little bit more detailing to go around. And this is something that I mentioned, just practicing, use a cheap dough, even a store-bought dough. Start practicing baking, cutting the shapes, and then even flooding. You'll notice that on ones like this, I touch the cookie and then I bring it around and touch it back down. That helps keep more of a definite shape. So like up there, otherwise you're just gonna get big blobs and it's not gonna have that same definition. A lot of times when you fill and flood like this, what you're doing is just getting your base layer on. Sometimes you do an actual outline at the very end of your cookie. On ones like this, I know I am gonna do an outline, so I'm not gonna really stress out too much about how definite or how precise the fill is on this one, because when I do the outline, that really makes the pop of the outer rim of the cookie. All right, so same thing here. We're gonna swivel around. So, just try to get some good contact on it. Circular motions. I personally think that the circular motions too help make sure that there's not a lot of air underneath when you're doing it. These sugar cookies aren't as smooth as a lot of other ones because you have that cream sugar and baking powder in there. So just keep in mind when you're doing this, try not to drag on the cookie when you do. It'll make a noise. Try not to do that because you don't want to bring up flecks of the cookie into your icing. With time, you'll feel that consistency that you're wiggling around on top and not on the cookie. So I don't know if you can see, but there's a bubble right here, the little dark spot, and I'll just keep dragging it until it pops, and it's still there. So keep dragging, there it goes. And you'll notice that when you do it, you just kind of wiggle it back and it fills back in. Okay, sometimes when you do this, you may have too much icing. Don't be afraid to just pick it up, take some off, and wipe it on a wet paper towel. Sometimes if you look at it and it's too much, not enough, I may drag from the other side while it's still wet and add it where I want it, or just do one little dollop. Add a little bit at a time, because otherwise, as much as you're using or as thick as it can get, you don't want it to start running over the side of your cookie, because then that's a waste, and it's not going to dry evenly. And so that when you do a lot of writing or when you start doing airbrushing, you're going to need a very even surface. And then so you just keep moving around and look for any bubbles. That's usually the last thing I do, is one more bubble check, or put it back in the position where you had it. Make sure you're kind of even. So he's pretty good. See right there, I have a little bit of cookie. That's from dragging. Don't do that. All right, let's fix this little edge. Notice the circular motion gets it to the rim of the cookie. And that's it. So what I do is I let these dry on a cookie sheet, and these are the ones that I'm gonna let dry overnight so they get really good and hard. I'll show you some other ones that I've already taken care of. So here's what I started with. And what I do is I dry them with a fan. I don't know if you can see, but the fan that I have up here, I put that on low and I have it blow down on the cookies when they go to dry, and so that way it gets a little bit of air going on them, and when you do that, it gives them more of a shine when they dry, and they don't have a matted look. So if you have a small fan that can be just for your kitchen, use it. If you need to get one, do so, because that little bit of a shine makes your really smooth surface and helps it dry really evenly. All right, that's it for now. I'm gonna show you a couple more techniques on how to do basic icing. Thanks.